Hello, my beautiful tipsters. This is a Murdertizer, and I'm also going to start calling these a fireside chat amongst friends for a few reasons. One is the beautiful tipster Sherry said she felt like it was a conversation between friends sitting at their kitchen table. And the second reason I'm going to call it a fireside chat amongst friends is, look, let's call this a trigger warning up front. If you are uncomfortable with hearing the word vagina, you may want to skip ahead because we're going to call this Vagina Talk 2022. And why it falls on me to talk about this, I'm not quite sure. All I can tell you is that if a topic comes up repeatedly in conversation during the week, I kind of feel like I have to talk about it. I mean, I guess I don't have to talk about it, but we're talking about it because it also involves law enforcement, which is this is a terrible combination. So I want to just start off by saying, you know what? If you have a tip on a missing person or an unsolved homicide, or you just want to suggest a case, you can call us at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. You can email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can find us on all of the social media platforms. Instagram, Twitter, our Facebook page has the most engagement from what I understand, and I don't really understand a lot. And we also have the wonderful new justthetipsters.com website. I urge you to check it out. Let me know what you think. It was a labor of love, and I am happy that it is live now. So there we go. There's that. So I'm just going to say that a beautiful tipster happened to tell me a story of a relationship that went awry when someone she was dating, who happened to be in law enforcement, was attempting to perform oral carnal knowledge on her. And even though this person was, a grown-ass adult, he was attempting to insert his tongue into various openings. And she had to explain to him, that's just not how it works. I'm a little shocked that, how do you call yourself a detective? Maybe he wasn't a detective. Maybe he's just a patrolman. Maybe just patrolling vaginas. Anyway, I don't know how you're a grown-ass adult and you think, what do you do? Fold your tongue? We don't have to go into the rest of it. But it reminded me of an especially wonderful episode of Loveline. For any of you that are old enough to remember the amazing, wonderful syndicated radio show, and I believe it was a television show too, like maybe on MTV, with Dr. Drew Pinsky and Adam Carolla, my beloved Adam Carolla, who is one of the funniest, just a goddamn funny national treasure, one of the funniest human beings ever. And a young man had called into Loveline asking for advice on how to please his female partner. He was a very young man, might have been over 18, probably. I don't know. I think you had to be over 18 to be on the show, but I mean, how are they going to check? It's radio. You're calling in. I guess if you don't sound like you have a rattle, or a squeaky toy, you're knocking down your Lincoln Logs, then maybe they let you on. So this young man was asking how to please his female partner. And Adam said, did you ever watch the old Batman television series? And the young man said, yeah, I remember that. And Adam, who's kind of, I'm going to call him the Buddha of the bedroom, he suggested to the young man, when Batman leaves the Batcave kind of like at top speed, and there's like some Spanish moss hanging down from the top of the Batcave. And the young man said, oh yeah, I remember that. He was, just concentrate up there. If you think of the female anatomy as shaped like the Batcave opening, just concentrate up there. And I feel like anyone who has a, issue with not, I'm not the University of Melissa. I understand. I think I was captivated by this conversation with the beautiful tipster because the person was in law enforcement. And I think I was more shocked about the inability to understand how the female body works. So there was that. I mean, cops are interesting people. I had another discussion with obviously a much more experienced detective who we were discussing the carpet matching the drapes, a funny meme. It was a very funny meme, actually, involving Jada Pinkett. So, alopecia kind of thing. And I said, I too am a fan of the hardwood floors. And this detective did not know the term hardwood floors. And I was like, well, if you think about it, the carpet, there's no carpet. And he said, oh, right. Do you know why they call it a Brazilian? And I was like, I'm going to play dumb and say, no. And he said, because every day is a fiesta. So I'm going to call that the end of the vagina talk for today. And that's just two different perspectives of people who are in law enforcement. One person who feels that his tongue should be somehow insertable when it is not, and one that, thinks of Brazilian waxes as every day as a fiesta. So there you go. I wanted to give you a little update. I promise there's a case coming, and it's a big one. It's an important one, and I'm really hoping by the time that this airs that we even have some good news. But if not, I'm going to give you some information on how you might be able to help. It's timely. I did want to give you an update on the civilian crime analyst job because some of you have been so kind. Tipster Emily sent me this incredible makeup bag that's an evidence bag. It's adorable and funny, and I love it very much. And Tipster Sherry, has been so kind and supportive, and many of you have reached out. And I just want you to know it's not something that is imminent, I think. I think I have to do some more classes, and it was pointed out to me, I did speak to someone who was a civilian crime analyst, and she made the point that if I got into that, I would probably have to give up the podcast because it would be a conflict of interest. And that makes a lot of sense. It's very annoying to me that what I already do and what I think I'm already good at would be very helpful as a civilian crime analyst, but then I couldn't do what I love to do and what I'm really good at. So I'm definitely going to be looking at other things, and I know wherever I land, it's where I'm supposed to be. And I'm so grateful to you tipsters for hanging in there with me. You're so patient. And I wanted to bring this up that's very important to me. And I know I've mentioned it before, but I'm mentioning it again. And it is a quote that tipster Jen showed me a long time ago. And I know I've mentioned it, but I'm mentioning it again because it's important, and it came back up again. And it's the quote, "The blood of the covenant is stronger than the water of the womb." And that is the phrase that we have bastardized over the years, saying, blood is thicker than water. And no, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Your chosen family is a stronger covenant, a stronger bond, sometimes, than those who you may be linked to biologically. And I just wanted to say that because so many of you, I don't really have a family, and I don't have a family. Mark was my family, and you amazing tipsters, even though I talk about vaginas, when, you're probably completely clicking off or listening to some other podcast right now, and I don't blame you. I just wanted to say thank you so much to you amazing tipsters for being my blood covenant. You are, as much a family to me as anything I could have imagined. So I just want to say I'm grateful. So this week's, Murder Tizer case is timely because it's the case of Melissa Lucio. And I had heard about the case several times, but wasn't familiar with the details. And now that the time is so prevalent, I feel a little remiss that it's taken me this long to get to this, but it's an important one. Melissa Lucio is facing execution on April 27th of 2022 in Texas for the murder of her 2-year-old daughter, Mariah. And it's probably a crime that never occurred. Mariah died 2 days after she fell down a flight of steps in the house that they were renting. And Melissa has maintained her innocence for more than 14 years now on death row. And what they believe happened is that, false confessions were coerced out of her, and that led to a wrongful conviction. And, I don't want to point out one state, although we all know I'm not a fan of, Florida and Texas. So Texas has been unfortunately brought up to me several times by people much smarter than I, with a lot more experience than I have in dealing with people in Texas. And I am a little horrified by what I've heard. People really, sources that are very important journalists who work on, a national innocence project, who are the caretakers, the gatekeeper, the keymaster of an exonerated database for those exonerated from being falsely accused. Yeah, Texas, I feel bad. I feel bad pointing out Texas, but this is, I think, really repugnant. So Melissa was a lifelong survivor of sexual abuse and domestic violence. And I'm going to tell you that they always say hurt people end up hurting people. And I don't know that that's always true. Not that I don't. I know that's not always true. People who have been hurt don't necessarily turn back around and hurt someone else. And I believe Melissa Lucio is one of those people who came from such a broken background that all she wanted was to build a family. And she did. And it may not have always been easy. In fact, I'm sure it wasn't easy. But I also don't believe that she did anything to harm her child. And the rest of her many children say the same thing, that she worked hard. It wasn't easy, but she was never violent, that she never lost her temper, that she would walk away, not hurt anyone because of her terrible history, the sexual abuse, the violence that she experienced as a child. She was especially vulnerable to police coercion. And during her trial, she was prevented from presenting any of the evidence that would have explained why she falsely confessed during an interrogation. And in my mind, the confession is in quotes, because it wasn't, in my mind, it really is not a confession. And there was not enough physical evidence. And the district attorney at the time, Armando Villalobos, who, by the way, is now serving a 13-year federal prison sentence for bribery and extortion, he is the one who sort of, presented her with a statement and said, you're going to sign this as a confession. And she, after many hours, thought, if I just confess, they'll let me go. That terrible old thing that people who are falsely accused, it happens to them. They think that, that they're going to get to go home. And we've seen it so many times. You think to yourself, I would never confess to something I didn't know. Never. I just don't know that some of us, I know I can't say that. I'm a terrible codependent people pleaser. I pray to God, if some really skilled investigator, gets a hold of me, that I don't say something I didn't do. I'm going to hope I didn't do. But, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles really needs to take another review of Melissa's claim of innocence. The tactics that were used in her interrogation, the circumstances of her, childhood, her past, and also take another look at Mariah's death, which, I still can't help but believe there are things I understand why, like, how did this get to court? How did this get prosecuted? You'll understand when I read more of what happened. But I really feel like before they do something that's irreversible, like take the life of Melissa Lucio, I really feel like it deserves another look. So by 2007, Melissa had 14 children. 9 of them lived with her and her boyfriend, Robert. On February 17th of 2007, paramedics were called to their residence because their youngest daughter, 2-year-old Mariah, was unresponsive and not breathing. According to the Cameron County District Attorney's Office, Mariah was found at the home with signs of abuse on her body. She reportedly had scattered bruising, bite marks on her back, patches of hair that had been pulled out, and a broken arm. According to Melissa, 2 days earlier, Mariah had fallen down a set of stairs that led to her injuries. Mariah was pronounced dead upon arrival at a local hospital, and it was later determined that her arm had been broken 2 to 7 weeks before her death, and an autopsy showed she had a head injury and bruising of the kidneys, lungs, and spinal cord. Following her death, Melissa was arrested and questioned for 7 hours by the Texas Rangers, and she did not have an attorney present. She was not allowed any sort of food or water throughout that 7 hours, and she admitted to having spanked Mariah, but denied having ever abused her, which in the recording, she said over 100 times. Over 100 times in 7 hours, she denied having ever injured her daughter. And the Texas Ranger said, "Right now it looks like you're a cold-blooded killer. Are you a cold-blooded killer, or are you a frustrated mother who just took it out on her?" He kept saying, "We already know what happened." After several hours, Melissa Lucio stated, "Well, I guess I did it. I'm responsible." Which I feel like, "I guess I did it. I'm responsible" sounds like something a distraught mother would say. You would feel you're responsible no matter what happened. Now, many of her children were being questioned, at the same time. And there's a video of a female officer talking to one of Melissa's sons. "Did you see your sister fall down the stairs, or did somebody tell you that she fell?" And the little boy says, "No, I saw her fall." During Melissa's trial, recorded statements from her interrogation were described as a confession by District Attorney Villalobos. But he was also seeking re-election at the time, and as we know, he's, in a federal prison right now. A pathologist, Dr. Norma Fraley, testified that her autopsy revealed she did not die from falling down the steps, but instead her injuries were consistent with death from blunt force head trauma. Additional court documents said that the emergency room physician said he had not seen a case of child abuse worse than Mariah's. Now, Melissa's defense attorney said that these injuries were in fact from falling down the stairs, and that Melissa's psychological functioning contributed to her conflicting reports given to the officers. And despite any of these arguments, she was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to death in 2008. In 2011, an appeal against the conviction was denied. In 2019, a 3-judge panel of the Federal Appeals Court overturned the sentence due to the trial court's interference in Lucio's right to present a defense. This decision was subsequently overturned, and Lucio then remained on death row. A forensic pathologist, Dr. Thomas Young, who was the former chief medical examiner in Kansas City, Missouri, reviewed the case at the behest of Melissa Lucio's post-conviction attorney, and he concluded that Dr. Farley jumped to all the wrong conclusions. In a similar case, a man was initially convicted for murdering a 1-year-old baby whose death sentence was overturned after further investigation. Dr. Fraley's conclusions had also been contradicted by other medical experts. In August of 2021, an amicus brief was filed on Melissa Lucio's behalf by a group consisting of legal scholars, experts on violence against women, representatives from 16 organizations that work against violence against women. And the brief states that Melissa Lucio's subdued behavior and sort of her acquiescence during interrogation were the result of prior trauma and as a survivor of abuse. They argued that the judge's order to exclude expert testimony on the effects of trauma had deprived Melissa of the only means she had of explaining her demeanor and self-incriminating statements that she was innocent of her daughter's murder. In January of 2022, Cameron County officials signed an execution warrant for Melissa Lucio, and she is scheduled for execution on April 27th of 2022. She has petitioned for clemency. If a majority of the Board of Pardons and Paroles recommends it, Governor Greg Abbott can grant clemency. The parole board plans to vote on Lucio's clemency petition 2 days before the scheduled execution, which would be Monday the 25th. Her execution is Wednesday the 27th as of now. In March of 2022, a letter to the Board of Pardons and Paroles, 83 members of the Texas House of Representatives, including both Democrats and Republicans, signed a letter claiming that executing Lucio would be a miscarriage of justice. In April of 2022, a juror on the trial, Johnny Galvan, wrote in the Houston Chronicle that he had wrongly succumbed to peer pressure during deliberations and had changed his vote from a life sentence to death penalty. The Mexican ambassador to the United States, Esteban Montezuma, announced on April 22nd that he had sent a letter to Governor Abbott asking him to grant executive clemency to Melissa Lucio, as Mexico has historically manifested an unwavering commitment to its opposition to the death penalty. I'm just going to tell you it's cases like this and understanding how Mark Humphreys thought of the death penalty that has changed my mind. I have always been an eye for an eye, and if you kill someone, you don't deserve to live. And there are too many people who have been put to death who were innocent that I can no longer be a proponent of the death penalty. I just cannot. I will not take that chance. I won't take that chance. And there's a very good chance that Melissa Lucio is an innocent woman. Her case has been covered by Time Magazine, the New York Times, the New York Post, the Guardian, USA Today, the Texas Tribune. There was a 2020 documentary called The State of Texas versus Melissa. It was at the Tribeca Film Festival and won Best Documentary in March of 2022. And this has happened twice recently. On Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, he has a section called Wrongful Convictions, and her case was the main one that was mentioned in March of 2022. He also mentioned it again in April 17th, under a section called Police Interrogations, where he shows, that her confession shows every hallmark of being a false confession. And even though I don't really care about this, Kim Kardashian called Texas Governor Greg Abbott to grant clemency for Melissa Lucio. So there's something you can do, and something I can do, and something I've already done, and I'm hoping you might consider doing it. If you read up on this case and decide, like I did, that Melissa Lucio's case deserves more review, you can contact the Texas Governor Abbott, at 956-446-2866. If you live in Texas or if you live anywhere, you can contact the new DA and urge him to withdraw the execution date. At the very least, withdraw the execution date and give her another chance. That number is 956-300-3881. Again, Governor Abbott, 956-446-2866. DA signs 956-300-3881. And more cowbell.